In traditional de-identification, an individual record that relates to an individual still relates to that individual once it's been de-identified. It's just the obvious identifiers have been removed from it, either the direct and or indirect identifiers. Whereas synthetic data, there's not a one-to-one correlation between an individual record and an individual. Nevertheless, this language in HIPAA that uses de-identification as an example should pretty clearly apply to this type of processing as well, because it is creating information that is not identifiable back to the individual. And so I think there's a very compelling and strong case for saying that this type of use does fall within one or more of those HIPAA exceptions. Of course, there are other obligations under data protection law, like data security and transparency. And so to the extent that you are using real data to generate synthetic data, that should be done in a secure environment. There should be reasonable transparency around that. There should be a language in the privacy notice or the like that says, this data may be used to generate other non-personal data or something like that. But those are relatively simple things, or things that should already be in place in any organization that's processing personal data. So the barriers under the law to the generation of synthetic data are relatively low and can be dealt with. The second legal question I wanted to quickly address, and this one's fairly straightforward, is if you are sharing data with a third party for them to generate synthetic data for you, what are the obligations? Well, these are the obligations that most of you are probably already familiar with around sharing data with a service provider. Presumably the entity that would be sharing, that would be creating synthetic data from a real data set isn't doing anything else with that original data set containing personal information. So this would fall into the provisions under most privacy laws that allows for the use of service providers to provide services on another organization's behalf.